to it.
Exactly.
Hey there, everyone. It's Sandy here with you for our Gap Network show, and Damien's here online with me as well. How are you, Damien?
I'm good, and yourself?
I'm doing exceptionally well. It is great to have you on board. It's great to have you here to join with me tonight. We should have Larry on a little bit later. He's having a few technical issues at home with new router being put in place and a few other things being sorted out. But here we are anyway. Technical stuff is always the challenge that we have when we're doing these kinds of things. But anyway, it's all part and parcel of what we deal with in today's world. And we're dealing with a lot of stuff coming up in terms of business and various things that are going on. How are you going with your digital marketing? How are you going with the things that are happening in your world, mate?
Busy. Everyone's wanting to kick off the new financial year and keep themselves out of trouble and create more leads and start things moving again.
Oh, that's good. And, I'm so glad to hear that. That's wonderful. That's good. Now your digital. Just quickly on that one. Last time we spoke live from Fusion Creative, you mentioned a few little tips on digital marketing. So, not that we want to sort of just jump into that straight away, for the sake of it, but what are you finding are the biggest issues around people getting their digital marketing up and running?
Underestimation on a couple of fronts. They underestimate how long it takes to get results. So paid ads is great. It's low-hanging fruit. It's fast results, but it hits your hip pocket straight away. Content and SEO, it's a long game. It's a slow burn, and you need to know that going into it. So it's time frames. The other underestimation is in regards to the competition, knowing what your competitors are doing and knowing what you need to do to be competitive, but also to stand out against your competitors. And the final thing is underestimating just how sneaky, if I can use that word, Google and Facebook and those sorts are, because they keep moving the goalposts and creating a tougher field to play on, to be honest with you.
No, it can be a challenge for sure. I've of course come across that, and you and I have had these conversations before about these sorts of areas, and it's a very important area to get right, particularly in the online realm, and of course even for the offline realm in the sense of how we're actually connecting with people and so forth and so on. So face to face. So it's a very, very important thing. Let me just jump on and quickly say also tonight that we're welcoming our very, very special guest, Andrew Stone, with us. Damien, you know Andrew quite well.
Very well. Very well.
And no doubt we'll be chatting in a panel kind of way when we get into our coaching questions in a few minutes, which I've got some really, I think some very topical, very not controversial so much as just hot topics, I guess, of what's going on in our world today, what's going on in Australia and of course across the world as far as what we can do and what we can do about it. So we're going to be asking some of those questions tonight. So we'll pose those in just a few minutes. But before we go into that, let me just mention something. I'm going to kind of jump in here on something that we are doing as Gap Coaching. For those of you that don't know, we run a business called Gap Coaching, and that is about taking people from where they are to where they want to be in terms of bridging the gap from where they are to where they want to be. But the thing I want to bring up just for a few moments is what's coming across your screen right now, and that is what we have. It's called the Gap Assist program. Now, what this is about mentoring young people. We spent sometimes, 2 or 3 years actually looking after young people and helping young people grow, be mentored in terms of goal setting, in terms of communication, in terms of where to next, all that kind of thing. We did that for a couple of years with about 240 plus young people, as you know, and you know the story behind all of this. But we decided because of that, we found that there were a lot of younger people and those people in transition who were really struggling with where to go, with direction. Oh, the dogs are in. The dogs are in tonight. but yeah, they're really struggling with direction. So we actually put together something from all of the research that we did, anecdotal and otherwise, and full-on research with the young people that we were dealing with as to what would bring them some direction, what would bring some hope. We put together this Gap Assist program. Now, we've made a decision as a group, as Gap Coaching, to actually put this out there for free for young people. We're already helping some young people with this that are doing this already. It's actually hitting a lot of young people already in the right direction, and a lot of the principles we've put in place were there for those 240 plus kids that we did, young people, most of young people, a couple of years ago as well as what we're doing this year, and as well as what we did with some schooling last year. So we just want to let people know about that, Damo, because the reality is that we've got a situation where we really need to, and want to, get what's happening out there to as many young people as possible. So if you know people if you're watching right now, if you know people that really need this, young people that need this, please make a comment in your Facebook page or the YouTube page, wherever you may be, because we're on YouTube and we are on Facebook on a couple of places. So we would love to have you involved in all of that and get you involved in that. That's something that we want to do. No strings attached, just want to help as many young people as we possibly can. So certainly want to do that. I'll let that run across there just for a few moments longer. Damo, before we head into the coaching panel, let me just quickly ask you again, how are things going with, how do you think, guys, things are going in terms of general business across week? Because you're across Sydney, you're across a few different places. We'll talk a bit more about this in a few minutes. But just give us a quick, synopsis of where you're seeing things going with on a personal and professional level.
That's a really good question. People that are agile and able to pivot seem to be faring a lot better. I know I was talking with a gentleman this afternoon who's in the recruitment industry, and he's done a couple of quick pivots because COVID really impacted on some of the industries he was servicing. So he had to rethink his business game a bit, and I think that's the key, is finding that opportunity in amongst your current business model, because a simple little stop and pivot can work massively in your favor.
Yep.
Whereas others who are just like, nah, we've always done it this way, seem to be hurting more because they're just not flexible to move.
Excellent. And that's a good time for us to actually bring in Andrew. Andrew, I'm about to bring Andrew Stone into our time this afternoon. Thank you, Andrew, for coming on in and joining us. Thank you.
Hey, everybody.
There you are. And thank you for being online with us. And, of course, you know Damien quite well.
Of course. He's the digital legend.
The digital legend. Yeah, there you go. I've heard other things about Damien, but we won't go there. But as far as this afternoon is concerned, we're actually going to jump into a bit of a panel between the three of us on some really important questions of what's going on in our world today in terms of what we just started talking with Damien about a few moments ago, which was, and the question we really want to dig into. We've got 4 questions we're going to dig into as a panel. And then, Andrew, I'm going to get you to talk about some things that you wanted to share on, on some clarity checks on ourselves and our organizations and various things that go with that. So we're going to jump into that a little later. But I've got some questions here that we're just going to, I guess, without notice really, but there's certainly questions that come up on a regular basis for us right now at this present moment. And those coaching questions are around business, of course, but in the business environment, as I always like to say, we're always doing life in business. It never stops doing, the fact that we're actually doing business means that it doesn't mean that we stop doing life. So one of the things that I want to sort of jump in on there, and I'll get you to answer this as best you can, Andrew, on the question of what do we do in the current business environment for businesses that are struggling to do that pivot that Damien mentioned a few moments ago. So what are we doing, or what can we do in the current business environment where businesses are struggling in terms of pivoting and what they need to do?
Well, we often talk in leadership circles around the growth mindset. So having somewhat of an agile mindset, not just practice mindset, because that allows all areas of your cognitive, your feelings, your belief, your vision, your mission to all be congruent with one another. So that one part of you, in essence, if your business was a body, it wouldn't make your arms flexible, but not your legs. You know what I mean? It's mobility the whole way through. And so I've spoken to many businesses recently and said, look, it's the ultimate reset. At the end of the day, we didn't ask for the disruption. It just happened. It's a circumstance that was out of a lot of people's control. And so the mindset, the agility has to be that of, what can I reset? Because in essence, there would have been practices, and there would have been beliefs, there would have been vision, there would have been parts of our operations that haven't been questioned in years. Like, they hadn't been questioned, they hadn't been tested. And so right now we are going through, whilst disruptive and the need to pivot and maneuver and be agile, we also get to dump the things that we didn't ever really bring into question. We get to actually slimline efficiencies in order to reinvest in the things that actually now matter. And I think it's been, look, it hasn't been easy. And I in no way, shape or form can I say what we've experienced has been easy, but it has been necessary in some cases to declutter some of our business model and mindset and move forward. We've had to, lose dead weight as such that we could carry before because we never questioned it, but now we can't. So it's definitely made it more clear.
Let me just jump in on that for a second on the decluttering. What are you referring to as decluttering?
I would say things like, let's just go really practical. The amount of office space that you need to run the business, what it looks like for overheads, what it looks like for operational costs, what for years we talked about a hybrid of working from home with technology, and of course the autonomy and so many of our lifestyles would allow us to work autonomously while still being responsible. And I have a general rule of thumb: if you hire someone that you don't trust to work from home, you shouldn't be hiring them at all.
It's a very, very good point. By the way, just as we're here right now, wanted to, for those that are watching and those that will maybe even watch this later, we would love you to just put some questions in here so we can answer them as we go. We do obviously have a set amount of questions here that we're looking at, but I'd love for you, if you want to just to jump in, put a question down, put it in the comments there, and we'll pick it up. Just connect with Stream. If it says on your thing there to connect with StreamYard, StreamYard is a great, it's all very safe and whatever else to join with. So just connect with us, and then put your comments in or your thoughts in on anything that can actually help you. And we can help you with as far as what's going on in your life and business. Let's just, Damien, let me just bring you in on this question around the current business environment, but around what's a declutter for what you think on a personal level as well.
Really good question. On a personal level, I work remotely. My offices, or the people I work with, are around the country. So decluttering for me is I only keep what I need, which just sounds so plainly obvious. I feel like I'm being Captain Obvious, but when I worked in an office in Brisbane, I'd rock up and I'd have this and that, and it was just, there were distractions on my desktop or distractions on my machine, where I thought I was proving my productivity, but really it didn't matter how much time I spent on this project or that project. If the project succeeded or not was what mattered. So I didn't need these third-party apps to prove my productivity. I just put runs on the board. And it's really interesting because now when I'm in a meeting with some of my clients and stuff, I'm like, well, hold on. This isn't important. Let's map out our critical path. Everything else is just cream on the cake. But what is it that we want to achieve over the next, 6 months? Let's start there. And then we can pretty it up later. But so long as we hit each of our milestones on that critical path, that's when we worry about all the other stuff post that. It's making that critical path very clear and easy to follow.
Andrew, are milestones, important in the current, environment? Like as far as, or are we just trying to get by on a day-to-day basis?
I think you have to hold the tension of both. I often will say that the letters in reactive and creative are exactly the same. The only difference is the order in which you put them in. And so we have to be able to go, is this a problem I'm reacting to? And that really should be the exception to the rule, even though the whole world has had to react in essence, and industries have had to react, leaders, we've had to react to things that were out of our control. On a general rule of thumb is how much of the model that I have is creative and proactive, and therefore there has to be milestones. And then on the other side of that, you go, but I have margin to react. So years ago in a book called Leadership Mastery, they quote a research done by the top, I believe, 500 companies, Forbes 500, and the top 20%, the top 10% performing businesses had an 80% creative to 20% reactive ratio, and the lowest performing 10% had a 20% creative to 80% reactive ratio. So you're looking at, is reaction the exception to the rule and creativity being your normal with margin. So reaction should be marginal, not your normal, because even speaking to leaders today and yesterday, I said, you may be the best firefighter there is, but it's better to be the smoke alarm installer. So it's better to manage your smoke alarms than it is to put out fires all the time.
No matter how very good, very good point. Very, very good point. Let me just jump through onto a new subject for us, like another question. And that question is this. What do you think? We'll start with you, Andrew, first, and then we'll jump over to Damo for some thoughts as well. But what constitutes what you believe as a true network of businesses? Do you believe, for example, is it a co-op? Is it a I was actually talking with someone earlier on about this today, and it just really came up as a really, I think, a very important point about particularly during this time that we are in, what's a true network of getting people together?
I think a true network, we've used the term a lot, it's been a buzzword. If I can regeneration that word in a healthy space, I would say it's a collaborative community. It's a group of people that want the best for one another. It is something. Networks traditionally, not all, but traditionally, have been a place where it is almost very transactional. And if we're going to talk into the new era of business, transactions are easy. It's the transaction isn't what we're looking for anymore. We're actually looking for longevity, sustainability, partnerships. Can we collaborate for the long term? Do I believe in your value system? Can we have a coffee together? I always say I like to work with people I can enjoy having a coffee with. And that doesn't mean that, we won't do business. It just means that I have a relational community before I have a functional network. And so I think the two and two can work together, but I definitely believe in relational, collaborative community beyond, hey, let's get together and switch business cards or whatever, because that's too transactional. I don't think it has longevity.
I love that. That's really, really good. Damien, what's your thoughts on that?
I actually totally agree with Andrew. I've got over 20,000 followers on LinkedIn, and it's funny. I'm not adverse to to accepting invitations and that sort of thing. But I really find out who I want to do business with based on our interactions following that initial connection. And there's a bit of a buzzword going around where you get pitch slapped on LinkedIn. You've said, yes, I'll connect with you, no worries. And the first thing they do is a sales pitch thrown at you.
Yeah.
And I'm automatically like, I don't know you, so why am I going to do business with you? I have not researched you. I haven't even been looking for your business or anything. We connected on LinkedIn because I wanted to connect and get to know you. And so there are certain people on LinkedIn I will just follow and I'll read everything they like or post about because we've built relationship.
Yeah.
But there are others where I've actually got a little marking system, and I'm like, I'm going to be a bit cautious around this person because they pitch like me.
Yeah,
It's interesting, relationship.
It's interesting. Like I talking about that, and I haven't heard that. That's the first time I've heard that terminology, pitch slap. But it definitely fits. I have a game that I play called Words with Friends, which I love playing. It's just it's just an online Scrabble basically. And now every second day I'm getting pitch slapped by people who want to. Oh, hi, how are you? Enjoying the game. Oh, by the way, what do you do? And all of a sudden I'm being seconded supposedly by this person who wants me to join their Bitcoin thing or their cryptocurrency thing or whatever it is. Oh my gosh! And by the way, if you're watching this right now, put in a bit of a comment about that if that's a problem you're having, because it is a big, big challenge. I'm having it every day, literally, from people who are trying to push their wares, so to speak, online to me. And it annoys the daylights out of me. I tell you, it really annoys me. And I just hate it. I hate the whole thing about all of that. On that regard, what is the best way? Either one of you can speak up. I don't care, or both. What is the best way, do you believe, apart from obviously we're talking about relationships, but what is the best way to actually, is there a step process? Or is it just the fact that we relate and we actually get on well?
I read a book a little while back called Think, Do, Say by a gentleman called Ron Tite. Runs a large marketing business over in Canada. And the term pitch slap, I stole that from him. But his approach is very much, hey, you know what? We don't start with the pitch. Let's build a relationship. But it's that order of think, do, say, where you put runs on the board, you put value in, so that people see you're not in it for yourself. You're actually in it to create a sustainable working relationship that is mutually beneficial. So great little resource.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew, and that's my approach.
Yeah, sure.
There's a great book by Gary Vaynerchuk called Jab, 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 Right Hook. And for everyone watching, that means that you give to the community, you give to the people. And if you ever have an ask, you got to have far more love, generosity, kindness in the bank before you do that. And LinkedIn, I mean, I'm laughing with Damien right now because people will say, hey, let's connect. And sometimes when they're local, especially if they're Brisbane or Gold Coast or somewhere along the coastal area, that the whole greater Brisbane area, I'll actually say, hey, why don't we catch up for coffee? And that's my litmus test to see, hey, do they ever reply? Because I'll get 4 messages. We're going to connect. Here's a link to something. Here's an event. And I see that they're local. So I actually go, hey, why don't we catch up for coffee? My shout, whatever, let's meet somewhere in the middle. And I very rarely actually get a response to that. So either it's automated or they're not genuine. And so after you're around a lot of different groups of people in different industries and networks, I now just trust my friends. Honestly, the exception to the rule is me to actually reach out, and I've done it before. That's fine. To say, hey, would you ever spend half an hour with me, or let's chat? I'd love to connect. And then the other 80% of my life is a friend telling another friend to connect. And so I automatically will trust a referral before I trust anything that's cold. And like Damien said, you know, the pitch in your face, just, you're going to do my event. I don't even know you. So
yeah, and I don't really care about you, and I'm the same way. So I honestly, that's yeah, I just that sort of stuff just doesn't thrill me at all, and it really repels me, to be honest. I feel very much repelled by that, or very much reviled in that sense by that.
Yeah.
Talking of which, one of the things that's leading me into that you know what you just said there a few moments ago, there are lots of businesses today that actually are trying to get this sort of stuff working, to actually have a decent network, a decent as you said, collaborative community, and I love that wording.
Yeah.
But there are lots of businesses out there today who have gaps in their business. For example, they might have gaps in customer service, in the old terminology, you know, just general marketing, the ability to technically, and I've got written here things like cash flow challenges or even staffing issues and things. As far as that goes, what are the gaps, you know, from you guys, and what you guys could get feedback on? And this is actually going to be something I'm going to ask for those of you that are watching online to make a comment on as well, and to put some comments on some thoughts on this, if you can, if you would, please. Where are the gaps in businesses today? Where are the biggest gaps in business today?
I think there's a bit of a gap in HR, in terms of understanding. Like, it's the biggest cliche. People are our greatest asset. It's thrown around so flippantly, but if they really are your greatest asset, what are you doing to protect that asset? And I think that because they're in the trenches with you, they're there to achieve something, we sometimes lose that value. And so a lot of what Simon Sinek says about looking after team, I think is a gap. And I think that's why he's got such traction. It's because people resonate with that. Yes. So that's one of the gaps, I would say. I know cash flow is always going to be, you know, one of the top priorities for any business. But I'm not an accountant. I'm not the bloke to speak into that. But definitely HR. Andrew?
For cash flow and whatnot, again, I'm with Damien. I'm not a finance guy. I wouldn't really speak to that as such. But I would, from a leadership sense, and I do agree with Damien, HR is a massive gap, especially when you can't have retention. So if your modeling doesn't allow leadership pipelines, it doesn't allow them a conversation to say, how long can I be here? What is the pathway forward? Is there coaching? Is there PD? Is there, you know, I start here, but if I stay with you for 10 years, where am I going to end up? You know, and so often we have, in different industries too, you know, you're working on, here's your 12-month contract. You can't build much in 12 months. So you have a group of people that, let's just for the sake of the ease of a calendar year, that start in January and in essence finish the next January. By September, October, they're already on Seek.com looking for other roles. And so what you've done really is you technically have someone for 9 months functioning for you, but you've got 3 months of a person in anxiety trying to figure out, are you going to keep me or not? So you've got these cycles that happen. And so you don't get a lot out of a 9-month period, especially if it's a leadership role. Like if it's an executive level role and you're running on 12-month cycles, you really need to create some hope for the future so that you can say, hey, let's build together. We'll make some mistakes. We'll have some of those issues, but we can maneuver the future forward. And so I would say HR, massive. And then the other gap that I see all the time is the translation of whether it is the board, whether it is the governance area of CEO, board level thinking, GM, chairman kind of level, translating the vision that they have to the mission then of the operations of the company. So, people need to lead the vision, but they also need a team that manages the mission. The gap there, to use the terminology of gap, is the translation of, which is in essence, Damien and I work together. So we translate the vision to make it doable for the mission. Otherwise, it's just this very qualitative, very, almost, ethereal kind of atmosphere of this is somewhere where we're going to go. How do you translate that then to longevity in HR? Because people attach themselves to a story. What's the story attached to the vision that is so compelling that people actually want to stay and connect? And money doesn't now become the motivator, but actually the story does.
Yeah, wow. I really like that. When you were talking about vision a few moments ago, we might just jump on that for a few seconds. When you're talking about vision, and I love talking about vision, I've always been a person who loves, sharing about that. I kind of light up when I talk about that kind of stuff because I just really enjoy those discussions around vision and what vision is all about. And these days, I guess probably more so for me, I've actually started to connect vision with culture and various other things that go with that as well. But in terms of vision, and you mentioned the translation of that vision to other people, and this to me is probably one of the parts where probably in years gone by, I'll have to be honest, I don't know that I translated that vision as well as I should have into people's situations or into people's lives as a leader. What would you say for those that are watching with us this evening? What would you say would be, one or two things that are essential to the translation of that vision into their thinking and to them getting the ownership? Andrew, sorry.
The translation comes almost as a twofold, because when you're translating vision, the person listening they'll pick up the story where it says, how does my story, personal story, connect with the organization's vision? Like Simon Sinek talked about the compelling why. But how does my personal story connect to the corporation's vision? Whether it's a social enterprise, whether it's a big corporate, they're trying to find their story in the big story, okay, personally. But then they're also trying to utilize their giftings, the things that they're good at, within that story. So how then does my role fit into the story, and does it have a future? Or am I a one episode kind of role? It's like it's finding that narrative that says I connect personally, my heart connects to the big vision, but my hands and my head, my role connects to my corporate and my role and what I do here. And sometimes we miss it. We all do. One of the most compelling things we've been able to build of recent, because we've always built, one of our catchphrases you could say is, we don't build businesses, we build legacies. And that comes from a deep well of values that says we've got to build something for not just my generation, but the generation that comes after. And we don't just do that for our company, we do it for every business, because we've managed 5 succession plans and we're right in the middle of another 2. So we're future fitting all the time. And this is where we're learning the nuances of the human heart to go, this is what people are connecting to. They're connecting personally. Does my story align and does it connect? And then does my role and my giftings, and do they both have a future here?
Gosh, all of that's so good. That's so very, very good. Let me just jump on to a last question, then I want to give you some time, Andrew, just to share on some things that you wanted to share on. I so appreciate your time. And Damien, thank you so much as well for your time this evening. Where are the gaps? And talking about gaps again, just want to jump into a personal life side of things. So where are the gaps on a personal level? I know that all of us actually connect with people as a whole, on a community, not-for-profit and for-profit sort of stage, or stages, should we say. Where are you finding that, and it's probably partially due to some degree to the COVID situation as well, But where are we finding gaps in personal lives right now? Where are we finding the gaps in where people are actually not living up to their full potential? Either one is fine. Either one of you jump in.
I don't think this is a holistic answer, but I think it's part of the equation. I think the whole COVID situation has rattled people. Extroverts in particular can't go out. Cabin fever has all of a sudden become very real for us. But my biggest concern, and I think we can see this because of the mental health implications that are starting to raise their head, my biggest concern is people's belief system. Whereas when they would, prior to COVID, you had to have faith in yourself, in what you were doing. You had to, and this is coming from, I'm currently reading through the book, The Power of Positive Thinking again, which is a massive read, but it highlights the fact that if we don't have that positive framework and mindset, the implications of COVID, the restrictions, all of that, all of a sudden weigh heavier. But I think, so I know for myself, I will send random text messages to friends and work colleagues and stuff, A, to check in, but B, also to remind them, hey, you're good at this. So it just gives that lift, because I think we all need that moving forward, and to get beyond this and find a new normal.
Gosh,
that's so good. Andrew, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, Damien is one of the most encouraging people that you'll meet, and he'll send you messages and try to, just randomly, it'll lift your day. So if you're in Damien's world, you're blessed and great, and I'm grateful for it personally. One of the challenges I know I faced, and I would assume that it's other people as well, is that it actually revealed things in us that we never had to deal with before. So busyness can hide a lot of things that we actually don't want to deal with. And it could be mental, it could be your soul, it could be health, it could be I'm too busy to work out. Now it's like I'm at home, and I'm allowed to walk, or I'm allowed to go for a bike ride. And whereas before we were always in the office or traveling. So there were many things that we could excuse ourselves from because of our busyness. And one of the challenges I know I faced personally as a leader was, so now there are things that have become far more efficient in my life. Am I going to fill it with more stuff, or am I going to be working on myself to become a better human being, a better leader, a better dad, a better husband, a better boss for the people around me, so that I can actually declutter my soul and my mind and find self-care again? Because we're so ready to jump back into everything. There's been some of this where I've gone, you know what, I don't need to do that anymore, because I used to get fatigued from that, or I don't need to do that many meetings like in that style. It can now be, a 1 hour Zoom call. Not that I'm a huge fan of being on screens all the time, for the record. I love in person, having coffee. This is I love you, Sandy. So this is different. But what I'm saying is that, you learn the hybrid, but one of the definite things for me was decluttering myself for that clarity. That was the toughest thing I had to do.
That is actually very, very true. And it's very easy to go back to what was supposedly normal. It's very easy to think that we should just go back to, we just need to get back to that, whatever that was, and without thinking, without actually taking that moment, like you just said, which is to actually say, my goodness, what I was doing before, was that efficient? Was that effective? Was that helpful? Was that making me happy? Just on a very basic level, was that actually giving me joy? Was it actually something that I actually enjoyed, or was I doing it because it was out of habit? Because as you know, we create neural pathways based upon things we've just done in the past, and it's very easy to get back into that. If I'm sitting here, why am I sitting here? Shouldn't I be doing this? Shouldn't I be doing that? Shouldn't I have been rushing off here, or shouldn't I be rushing off there to do something or other, whatever that is that we think that we should be doing? So we find ourselves in a situation ultimately where we want to be going back to that place. But the moment that we can't do that, or the moments that we can't do that, are the moments when we actually need to stop and have a look and have a think about what it is that we should be doing and could be doing better. And so that's actually, I think, a very, very powerful thing that we've actually just discussed there. And for those of you that are watching this now or later on, this is, I think, a really powerful point for your personal life, and also how it affects our business life or our professional life, as it were, and how it actually, we actually create better things and better use of our time. I think talking about Gary Vee earlier on, I think there was something, I was watching something yesterday of his where it talked about, getting 2 hours worth of work done, 8 hours worth of work done in 2 hours, and the process of actually that, and how that actually can work, and how that can work well, better, whatever it is for us. So anyway, that's just really important to think about. That ends our questions for those that are watching online. If you did have any other questions at the moment, please put them up. If you have anything else that you want to get answered, we are just appreciating what's happening here tonight. Andrew, you mentioned earlier on to me that you'd like to just have a bit of a chat with us on an annual, what you termed as an annual clarity check on ourself and our organization, and the two of those needing to be working together. So why don't you just run through some of that with us and just have a bit of a chat with us about that, and we might jump in with a couple of questions, but
of course,
in essence, you go for it.
Let's just, really the conversation is, so how do I keep myself living in clarity? And there are seasons and times that we've all faced where I remember years ago now, it would have been 2013 or 2014 at the time, but I was sitting in a room of about 10 young entrepreneurs, and we were all in the middle of, building and doing and, whatnot. And I'd actually helped or coached, served some of these leaders in their clarity journey. And I remember sitting around the table, and we were all kind of going around and, giving a snapshot of where we were. And I was in a season of transition. And I believe, we are all right now in somewhat you'd consider a season of transition, whether it's a big transition or a little transition, there's change coming. And so therefore, when we are dealing with change, one of the things I knew, can you hear my dog?
Yeah.
Can you hear my dog? I was like, I think they can hear my dog.
Yeah, definitely can.
One of the things was we have to break down and look at what clarity means to me. So I actually had to step up and go, you know what? The only clarity I have is that I have none. And you've kind of got to be okay with that in a sense of for a time. And so what I learned in that process was I had to be able to be intentional about, who am I now and who am I becoming? Right. And that's always, Sandy, you talk about the gap all the time. That's the gap of, that's part of your, your deliverables is who am I now and what's the gap in between who I am now and where I'm going. And, and so one of the questions you've got to ask yourself is, who am I now? And be really honest with yourself, because that's when we pretend. Like, you've got to be, pretty clear cut. This is who I am now. I'm this kind of business person, or I'm this kind of dad, or I'm this kind of mom, or I'm this kind of leader, or I'm this kind of whatever role you're playing, an identity that you're in. But who do I want to become? That's the desired state. So you're working between a current state and a desired state. And every year you should actually do that for yourself, is check in with that and say, this is who I am now. This is who I want to be. And then, of course, you have to ask yourself the question is, what do I have to let go of in order to be that person? Very rarely you have to add more to your life. Most of the time, it's you letting go of things, because clarity gives you a guilt-free no. So that's one of the things that, it's what do I have to stop saying yes to constantly, because a powerful no stops a multitude of yeses.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's one thing. Yeah.
Can I just jump in on that just for a second before you move on there, because that's really wonderful. But that I actually had this conversation today with a group of people, and the conversation was around identity theft.
Yes.
Of how we actually in our world today, if there's anything that's a pandemic, there's definitely a pandemic of identities being stolen, in terms of people not knowing who they really are and not knowing where they're really going. I just wondered if you wanted to make just a couple of extra comments on that, because I feel like that is a huge area of problem in our world today.
Yeah. Okay. So identity from what, in the context in which we're speaking,
of course,
has to come around of who are you without a title? Like, who are you without a title? Who are you without a job? Like, people will leave jobs and go, I don't know who I am anymore. Well, who were you before the job? Like, there's a title doesn't magically give you an identity. And if you're in something for too long, or you've associated so much value to a role or a business that it becomes you, that's when it gets dangerous for your own self, when you start looking at, what if things change? One of the reasons we even started the consultancy and the leadership and communications consultancy to begin with was because there was so much that's going to change in the next 10, 20 years, that the roles, and just go to the airport. Not that we're going to airports, anytime soon, but it's more along the lines of when you were traveling, suddenly there were a lot more check-ins that were all automated. So if your value was, I wanted to work in the airline industry and I wanted to be a check-in counter person, well, that's still there, but the opportunities aren't as much as they were, because technology has taken over. So that's got to, there are things that people studied for 20 years ago that in 20 years, it won't be relevant at all. Wow. And so it's about future fitting yourself so that you become agile and you're never attached to a role that you now say, oh, it's my identity. So your identity really is the person you are without a title, and the value you bring to humanity without having to have a role. So when someone loves to give or be generous or to lead people, a leader will lead without a title. An entrepreneur will build a business without needing to be called an entrepreneur. It's in you. There's a part of your gifting and your design that you were created for that doesn't rely on a title giving you identity. And that's where identity theft, though, is coming in, because we've had all our titles removed, and we've had our titles disrupted, and we've had our industry shaken to say, yes. I know pilots right now. They work for Qantas and Virgin. And one has been driving, road trains for, on the Western, in Western Australia. And then you've got others stacking shelves in different places. Now for me, they're still the same person. They never lost who they were, their gifting. They've just changed role. Yeah. And I just hope they can see that, because they're still the same smart, talented person that they were. But it's just knowing how and who you're around to affirm that.
Just got people totally agreeing on that point. And let me just say as well, this happened to me quite a few years ago as well. I went through this, Andrew, that you just talked about in terms of the role and the identity. Yeah. Saying that is a very pertinent point too, and I don't want to get us off track.
Yeah.
But I remember going through this in the early 2000s, of where I was in a role as a pastor and as a leader in a church environment, and then I was asked to step back for various reasons. I won't go into it now, but for various reasons, and it was important for me to do that. But the moment that I stepped back from what I was doing, I found myself absolutely floundering. I had no clue as to what to do next. It was like I was completely lost. In that particular situation, I was just so felt very, very, very lost.
Yeah.
And it took me several months. In fact, it probably took me up to a year or more to actually really start to work out who I was, as opposed to the role that I was doing being the thing that actually fulfilled me or fulfilled my life.
One of the litmus tests I think that we can use in this space, in this context of identity, would be if people had to come to you and pay you for advice, not what you do, but for advice, what would they pay you for? Like, what would they pay you for? Like, what would they monetize? What would they take their hard-earned salaries and pay and come to you and say, hey, I want to pay you for you to say, or you give me advice on what, and that's a kind of gifting that's in everybody that has a particular nuance to life that says, I've got a particular skill set in this and I can use that. That's title or no title. You're going to be a particular, a particular gift in that particular area. The other way of defining that is finding the identity. And if you had one last hurrah, and I challenged a group of leaders over the weekend with this one, is if you had one last hurrah where you got the microphone, you got to speak for the last time, and it was to a particular, group of people, who would it be and what would you say?
Wow. That's quite the challenge right there, isn't it? Goodness me, yeah.
Like, that's it. You get one last message to the world. What would it be? And if you can identify that, you'll be able to really be very agile in your role, because your purpose isn't your platform. This is where we get mixed up all the time. Your purpose is not your platform. Your platform serves your purpose.
That's so good. Yeah, your purpose is not your platform. I love that. That's so good. Yeah. Sorry, keep going. I just love that.
Yeah. So you live in those spaces where you've got to ask yourself tough questions, and then, from who I am current state to who I'm becoming desired state, you've got to then look at, what do I have to let go of? Because clarity gives you a guilt-free no. The second phase of that, though, is looking at what habits do I need to, in order to become that new person or create something new for myself with new clarity, is what habits do I need to add to my life? What habits do I need to get rid of in my life? And I mean, I'm talking to the minutia of waking up in the morning and the first thing you do is checking Facebook. So it is the small habits that you need to question and take an audit of your life over a week and go, what habits do I need to add versus what habits do I need to remove?
So good.
And then from there, you can go to the more soul-searching ones of what agreements and declarations do I need to add or remove from my life? Meaning, what's my self-talk? What's my self-talk? Meaning, when I get up, what's the first thing I really say to myself? What are the agreements that I have? What are the declarations I make over myself and my team or my business? Oh, everything's so tough today, so it's going to be a bad day. Or is that it might be tough, but there's going to be an opportunity somewhere. And it's not just positive spin. It's actually saying and getting your posture for life, living off what we live in a voice activated reality. So what am I saying that creates room for what I want to see?
Yeah, gosh. There's so much in that, mate. And I hopefully, as people watch this back later on and the things that we do with this, it's going to be great for people to hear this. Let me just bring Damien on that. Damien, is there any thoughts that you had on that or any questions you had of Andrew in relation to that at this stage?
No, you're interrupting my note-taking here, mate. I'm trying to take it all down. Self-talk is a big one. It really, really is. You can absolutely sabotage yourself with the wrong self-talk, or you can position yourself, no matter what barriers or obstacles come along. Your self-talk can position you in such a way that to coin a phrase from that book, Power of Positive Thinking, you throw your heart over them and the rest of you follows. That is the power of your self-talk. And I never realized that power for a long, long time. You can shut yourself down in minutes as soon as you wake up, just with your bad self-talk. So this is great stuff.
Yeah, gosh. And let me just add to that about the self-talk. you said something before which I really love, which was the wording of, we live in a voice activated world. I think that was the wording you used, or very similar to that. And that, to me, again, it just puts a very relevant term on what I would describe as the way we speak. It determines how we live, and how we actually live our world each and every day. And Damien has alluded to this as well. But we actually are living in such a world that and we can actually determine so much about how we live each and every day by the way we actually allow that to happen in our world. Like you said, when we start off in the morning, what's the first thought? What's the first thing we do? Is it, and there are some mornings when I've woken up in the last probably a few weeks or so where I've, made the stupid decision to put the television on to see what's on the news. And I've turned it off pretty quick, because at the end of the day, like looking and seeing what's going on and what's being said, it's just over and over the same stuff that's been said yesterday and the day before and the day before and the day before. We may as well call it, kind of Groundhog Day in some ways in some areas of life at the moment. So my thing is, okay, let's turn that off. Let's turn on what is actually going to be affirmative, is going to be positive, is it going to lift us, is going to encourage us. Because at the end of the day, if we are feeling encouraged, then what happens is we are able to encourage others. If we are feeling down and dirty and all the rest of it, then the people that are around us are going to actually be recipients of what it is that we are feeling and devising in our own thinking.
Yeah, and I think we have to give ourselves permission to feel a low day. Like you just have them. You have bad days, but bad days, if not handled well, become bad weeks, that become bad months, that become so bad days. And I know there's a leader that I was reading recently who said he gives himself 24 hours permission to have a bad day. to have it.
Yeah.
Bad day. But by the sunrise the next day, it's a new day. And I mean, if you even to look at some of the historical statistics, that there are more millionaires usually made in downturns of financials or financial crises, because they've got a mindset that there's opportunity coming. And I'm not talking about exploitation of the poor. I'm talking about when there is a downturn or there is a big circumstance that hits us all, there's always a lining of opportunity somewhere in it to be agile enough and solve a problem that people are willing to ask you to help with.
Yes. Yeah, and that's very true. And you're right about that too. And I think that's really important. The whole thing about it's an opportunity, not a, it's an opportunity, not an exploitation.
Yeah.
It's definitely not about that, because I've seen people and I've heard people in seminars that I've been to over many years. You head along to different seminars and things that you go to, and you'll find Johnny on the spot who's saying, get in and get that house, or get in and get that thing where that person hasn't got any money left, and you can screw them down, and you get this and get that, all this kind of talk, which to me is just, as you say, exploitation. But what I am interested in is taking the opportunities that come about. And I think that's part of what we were talking about earlier, which is, that ability to pivot in a world where we're actually able to, do something much more positive, what we can do. And, someone said to me, I was talking to someone today about this, and they were reading a book, and one of the standout phrases for them was simply, you can't help the poor if you are poor. And I love that phrasing, not because we're trying to be rich for the richness sake, but for the reason by which we can be, a person who living, shall we could use the term blessed, living blessed, that we could be a blessing. We're living, as people who have means, who can actually do something to create means for other people to be, to bring them out of the ditch, so to speak, or cause them to be raised up.
Yeah, and you've got to be able to realize that within that opportunity, if you're a generational, remember your vision is about a storyline that helps other people attach their storylines to it. That if in that opportunity, you're not just thinking about yourself. There's no way. Like every time we see a new opportunity, there's a filter or a mindset that comes into me. And Damien would tell you that at our staff meetings, I talk about our staff and team's children and go, hey, if we grow this well, one day your kids might work here. Your kids might have an opportunity here. Your kids. So when we talk about opportunities and solving problems and everything else, I'm constantly thinking, well, in 30, 40 years time, what kind of, if I take this opportunity with a growth mindset, even though there's challenges and there's more work or whatever, is it going to create a momentum for my team's even kids who are little right now to step into what they're called to do as well? Because we get to build environments. Leaders build environments. I call us environmental architects. We build environments that's what we do. And we have to build the environments where for all the different types of gifts and talents, that seed brings different types of trees and harvests because it grows and multiplies within that environment that we create. Because it's not just my gifting growing, it's my whole team.
Yeah, wow. Yep, that's it. And I love that generational thinking that you've talked about several times tonight. And I think that's a very, very powerful truth in the sense that, oftentimes in Western society, we kind of are very much anchored in the now as opposed to what the now can do to make sure that future looks very bright for those that are coming after us. And I think, again, Western society has a tendency to do that. Generally speaking, not all, and I think there's a lot of people awakening to that in our own society. But there are other societies in other nations and places that certainly have that mentality of moving forward. That's fantastic.
The corporate term for it. Oh, sorry. The corporate term for it is called intergenerational equity.
I love it. Intergenerational
equity.
Oh, I like
that. That's a term people can take away from this interview is I want to build intergenerational equity.
Intergenerational equity and a partridge in a pear tree and supercalifragilisticexpialidocious to you as well. No, I love that. That's actually brilliant. Intergenerational equity. I love that. And it's certainly something that we need to foster. We need to foster that so strongly, so powerfully. We're just about wrapping up for tonight. Thank you so much for Damien being on board with us. Andrew, just really grateful and thankful. We will get you live face-to-face.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
For the next time that we get together as far as that goes for our Gap Network show, which we do, as you know, online, but we also... we actually want to do that live. We do that with a live studio audience as part of how we go about doing that. It has just been a brilliant, brilliant time with you tonight. I've learned so much. Damien's taken copious notes by the looks of it. And I think as far as that goes, we've just been so grateful and thankful for your time, mate. I know that it takes away from your family, your lovely wife, Alison, and your boys. And so we just appreciate your time. We appreciate you coming on board to share with us tonight. One last thought to leave with us tonight, perhaps, Andrew, and then Damien, same thing, and then we'll close off with a couple of little things to finish with.
My last thought for anyone watching this, given the context that we're talking about, bridging the gap and everything else, I would say in order to bridge that gap well, is remove the unnecessary things that deep down you don't need anymore for you to cross that bridge. Declutter. There's my final word.
No, that's fantastic. Declutter. I love it. Damien, your words, mate, a few words?
Don't be a pitch slapper. Be someone people want to do coffee with.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my gosh, we don't want pitch slappers. I do not want pitch slappers in my life. I do not like pitch slappers. I will not have pitch slappers. Indeed. Yes, indeed. I agree with that totally. Let me just say just one more thing, Andrew. Just let me ask you, it's stonecreative.com.au. Is that correct? Stonecreative.com.au. Is that correct? Sorry, you're kind of in and out a little bit. I can't hear you. Can you just unmute your mic? You got your mic muted there, Andrew. Okay. You're muted, Andrew.
There we go.
There you
Okay,
go.
normal.
There you go. That's better. So
yes, it is the Stone Creative.
So stonecreative.com.au. I haven't actually got that up here.
Stone Creative Group. No, stonecreative.com.au.
Stonecreative.com.au. If people want to find out more about your services,
and our Facebook is called Stone Creative Group.
Stone Creative Group, right? So Stone Creative Group is on Facebook. Stonecreative.com.au is the website if you want to know more about what Andrew is doing. Damien obviously works with him as we've heard throughout tonight, and so these guys are doing a phenomenal job. They're doing a phenomenal job of helping these transitions of businesses, as you heard earlier tonight, and also just general, I guess, business coaching from the perspectives, as you've heard tonight, the various aspects that they are involved with. So I'd love you to get involved with that. For us, of course, if you want to get in contact with us, you've got that coming across the screen. We'd love to actually be able to help you there. Something's gone wrong there with Andrew, so hopefully we might get him back just quickly before he leaves. Just letting you know that we will be having our Gap Network show coming up in another a few days. Hopefully we'll reorganize that so we can actually have the live show back and running and happening. We've got you back.
There we go. Yeah,
there you go. So we lost. Yeah, it did totally dropped out. So I was just saying, our next Gap Network show, we will have live, and we will do that with a live studio audience as such as we call it. So just very, very grateful again for Andrew, for Damien, for being with us tonight. We would have loved to have Yasmina with us tonight, but she's got caught up in a very busy evening, but we're going to have her. I'm just so excited about having her on to talk about some of the issues around youth and what's happening in youth, the gaps that are happening in young people today, and have that conversation around her and some other people that we've got around that. That's going to be, perhaps I think for next time that we get together, it's going to be a great discussion. There's going to be some very, very interesting challenges there that we're going to face up to and confront in our next Gap Network show. Again, what we're about, as Andrew said before tonight and Damien, we're about bridging the gaps in people's lives, and whether that be in a personal or professional development area. So thank you so much, everyone, for being on board with us tonight. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for making comment around things. You have a great evening, everyone, and have a great rest of the week. If we can be of help, please let us know. We'd love to hear from you. God bless. And bye for now. And thank you so much for being on tonight. Bye for now.